Okay, so big drama. Really annoying that phone call came in. So, please put a massive, like the biggest post-it note you've got. Anything, the big reveal. Now, a lot of you, because we're in the 21st century, everyone has some knowledge of the expression to be Jekyll and Hyde. There's very recent pop songs with the concept of being Jekyll and Hyde being one thing and then another completely opposite thing as well. So when we started reading this book, you maybe had an inkling that Jekyll was in fact Mr. Hyde. I screwed that up at the end of that last video. That was trying to concentrate on two things at once, which clearly I can't do. So the massive twist, big reveal for the Victorian reader who did not know the expression Jekyll and Hyde. The first time they were reading this in 1886, when they were reading this, they have read this whole book having no idea that Jekyll and Hyde were the same person. I mean, some smarty pants might have figured it out, but actually, how is it possible? It's not possible, is it? You can't be two people. You can't suddenly be a tall, good-looking doctor who's a respectable member of society and also be this small creature, disgusting human who batters somebody beyond all recognition in the middle of the night. So this is the moment where the Victorian reader's like, oh, what? They're the same person? Oh my God, science is so crazy and amazing, but also dangerous at the same time. So now, this is where Utterson, for the first time, has gone, what? I've just found Mr. Hyde, who's killed himself. You mean that's Jekyll as well? So finally for Utterson, he's like, he gets it. However, you'll notice at the end of this chapter, we never get to find out how Utterson reacts to it. I've actually written on here, we don't find out how this affects Utterson. I mean, I'm guessing. He'll be like, what? My friend? Killed Members Carew? But like, with the potion inside him, so he looked like someone else. Very confusing. But we actually never get Utterson's take on it because we had Dr. Lanyon's narrative, and at the end of this next paragraph that I'm about to read, it's just signed off Hasty Lanyon. And then the final chapter is called Henry Jekyll's Full Statement of the Case, and it's essentially a very long final written confession by Henry Jekyll explaining how he how the whole experiment came about, how he felt changing for the first time, and it basically documents the whole thing where he has been turning into Mr. Hyde by taking this potion and taking another potion to turn it back again. I have another call coming in. You've got to be kidding. No one ever rings me. Like, literally no one ever rings me. But it's Kingston upon Hull, so I'm going to have to answer it because I've no idea what that is. It's gone now. Okay, I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to carry on. So, I'm really sorry. I literally never get phone calls. Ever. Anyway. Right, so bits that I need you to pick out from the bit that I've got in yellow here, which is the big reveal. So he puts the glass to his lips, takes one gulp. You've got verbs like reeled, staggered, clutched at the table. It seems like he's in real pain. He's gasping with open mouth. It sounds quite terrifying to watch. It's kind of like a horror scene here. I think if it was filmed by a modern director, they'd do it really in quite a frightening way. Because he talks about his face becoming suddenly black and the features seem to melt and alter. That's the sentence I've got in yellow there, because that just sounds disgusting to watch. So Lanyon springs backwards, leaps against the wall, he puts his arm up. My mind submerged in terror. That needs to go on your Lanyon page. He's so terrified, he's completely submerged in it. And he screams for God. He goes, oh God, I screamed, oh God, again and again. Now, he's a man of science. Remember, in this time period, science and religion, some people were trying to pit them against each other, even though they didn't need to be doing that necessarily. He's no longer trying to rationalise this. He's screaming for God. In this moment of abject fear of what science has done, he's asking for God. And you'll notice as we go through that Utterson has been doing that more, and when we read what Henry Jekyll has to say about the whole thing, he starts to reference God and religion a lot more as well, which is very interesting. You also need to have pale and shaken, half fainting and groping before him with his hands like a man restored from death. There stood Henry Jekyll. So you need to put that little bit on your Henry Jekyll page, and you need to put a page reference and put in your little note on your quotation booklet to actually say this is the moment that he's revealed himself to anyone. So to Lanyon. Okay, so I'm going to read the last paragraph now. What he told me in the next hour, I cannot bring my mind to set on paper. I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard, and my soul sickened at it, which I've highlighted. That needs to go on your Lanyon quotation sheet as well. His soul. Not like his scientific rational mind, but like his very being is sickened at the things that Jekyll tells him, and he can't write it down. He doesn't write it down. And yet, now when that sight has faded from my eyes, I ask myself if I believe it, and I cannot answer. My life is shaken to its roots. Please highlight that. Sleep has left me. The deadliest terror sits by me at all hours of the day and night. I feel that my days are numbered, and that I must die, and yet I shall die incredulous, which means completely disbelieving. As for the moral turpitude that man unveiled to me, even with tears of penitence, I cannot, even in memory, dwell on it without a start of horror. Please highlight. I will say but one thing, Utterson, and that, if you can bring your mind to credit it, will be more than enough. The creature who crept into my house that night was, on Jekyll's own confession, known by the name of Hyde, and hunted for in every corner of the land as the murderer of Carew. So please highlight the creature who crept into my house. And on Jekyll's own confession, known by the name of Hyde. That's the moment where, if the reader wasn't paying attention, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious it's Hyde. It's described as small and a creature. It's all the things that Stevenson's been using to describe Hyde. So I think you'd have to be pretty not switched on as a Victorian reader to figure out that it's probably Hyde, but this is the confirmation that Jekyll is Hyde. And Jekyll has created a potion where he can turn himself into Mr. Hyde. And it's particularly shocking because obviously he is being hunted from every corner of the land for the murder of Carew, which was that horrific, unnecessarily violent murder of a very nice, gentle, very high profile and well-known man. Okay, so we already know that Lanyon dies, and he dies 2 weeks after seeing Jekyll. So when he says sleep has left me, the deadliest terror sits by me all hours, we don't really find out what he dies from. He dies from shock. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't think dying of shock is an actual thing. I think it's more the consequence of not being able to sleep, not being able to eat. So I think it's more that consequence. Anyway, he dies 2 weeks later as a consequence of having seen this, and he can't recover from it. So that is the end of all of the chapters before we find out the real story. This is an amazing narrative technique that Stevenson's used. So we've had Utterson trying to figure it out, trying to rationalise it. We've then got the doctor. We can't dispute a doctor. A medical doctor has seen another human being who is a friend of his take a potion and turn into somebody else. Therefore, we have to take his word for what it is, okay? But we don't know why, we don't know how, we don't know what else Hyde has been up to. We've kind of had these, he's obviously been walking around in the middle of the night quite a few times. Utterson found him coming back from somewhere. Where was he? What was he doing? So the next bit is a really, really long final confession, essentially, of what happened from Jekyll's point of view. Now, this will probably take a couple of weeks, believe it or not, to actually get through. It's the longest chapter, and it tells you everything. And it goes back, it kind of tells you why he ended up killing Carew in the first place, and it fills in all of the gaps that we have so far, so it's brilliant. Now, what I'm going to get you guys to do, because I'm going to do that next week, I'm going to attach this document to the VLE task. So this is an extract, and here are the questions. So it's all attached to the thing that I'm going to do. Now, this extract is from Dr. Lanyon's narrative, the chapter that I've just read. And there are two questions. There's two parts to the question. So the question is, in this extract from Dr. Lanyon's narrative, Dr. Lanyon has written his account of his friend Jekyll's strange request to get some medical equipment for his house and give it to Mr. Hyde. Stevenson presents Mr. Hyde in a way which makes him sound not entirely human. Starting with this extract, explore how far you agree with this opinion. So the first thing you have to do is go through this extract. Now, I have highlighted key bits. If you don't understand any words, you need to go and look them up. Or go back and listen to me explaining to you what they were. And I need you guys to pick 3 neon lines, 3 bits that you think really sum up how Hyde is described as not human. Okay? Then I want you to do 3 squid paragraphs explaining, using your squids there, using your word level analysis as to how, linguistically, Stevenson is making him sound not human. So that's 3 squid paragraphs. I would say that would take you half an hour. I then want you to have a look at the second bullet point. We haven't done this before, but now you know virtually the whole story. The second bullet point says how Stevenson presents Mr. Hyde in the novel as a whole. So now what I want you to do for that bit is to pick some sections of moments that happen with Mr. Hyde, and I want you to find them in your book, and I would like you to choose neon lines from each of them. So for example, when he tramples over the girl, when Enfield is talking about that whole thing, he's described as in very strange terms then as well. So find some examples from that. Find another example of where Mr. Hyde has been, maybe, for example, the Danvers Carew murder would be a really good one. Any other bits where anybody's talked about Hyde, and you can find some examples in the text, okay? So you have to plan. You have to go back, find your quotations. You have to decide how Mr. Hyde is presented in the novel as a whole, and how he comes across as less than human, as something terrifying, something to be feared, okay? I'm going to write some more instructions on the VLE when I put this up, so don't worry, you don't just have to use this. But what I want is 3 paragraphs on the extract, and then ideally I would like 3 paragraphs on points that you have to make about how Hyde is presented in other bits of the novel that are not in this extract, okay? Because obviously that's part of what the examiner will be looking for when you do this next summer. If you're struggling, just do your very best. And could you please attach the document that you've managed to achieve, to do. And if you have had any major problems, maybe just write a little note on there to me saying, Miss, I couldn't do this because, or I've got this one example, I'm going to do the bit about trampling on the girl, but I couldn't find any other good bits, or do you think this quotation would work? Please do your very best on this. I am supposed to be setting 3 hours of work for you for the week, and obviously as year 10 you are my main priority at the moment, even over my year 12s at the moment, because we have a lot of content that I'm trying to get through remotely with all my stupid videos and phone calls coming in. I'm really sorry about that. So listen, try and get this work done this week. Don't worry if it takes you into next week. It's not the end of the world if you're just slightly behind and you end up reading the next bit. It will take quite a long time to get that last chapter done because I can only get 13. I'm actually up to 13 minutes now. I was only on 7 minutes before because I've deleted a load of apps that I don't use. So sorry about my rambling. I hope you understand the story now, and well done, Archie. I'm pretty sure that you told me in week 1 that you knew that this was going to happen. But yeah, so Jekyll is Hyde. Big reveal. Victorians were like, what? Mind blown. Crazy. So I will put this all on the VLE now for you. Bye.